Hi, everyone. I'm Nicky Reynolds. I just sat down with Jason Lee, CEO of the Home Care Association of America, or HCAOA as we know it. In our conversation, Jason shared some insights into his role at HCAOA and the impact the organization is having on the home care industry. We also talked about current legislation, how his team is addressing the concerns of agencies, and how agency owners and their care staff can lend their own voices to help strengthen and support the industry. It's a conversation full of important takeaways for anyone in the home care space. So let's dive in. Thank you so much, Mr. Lee. I'm going to call you Mr. Lee, Jason, for joining us today. Tell us a little bit about your role at HCOA. I know that it's your second anniversary as
Mhm.
CEO, but tell me a little bit about what you do there and why it would be of interest to our Rosemark customers and anybody else in the home care space who's watching this. What is HCAOA?
Sure. So, Home Care Association of America, we're a convening body. We have a robust membership of 4,500 members, ranging from, franchise model to independent agencies, and then what we call associate members, who would be like, vendors, software solutions, things like that. So, it's a really robust and diverse membership. And in our role, we try to, as I said, we do convening, we provide education. Probably number one is we provide advocacy and give the industry and our members a really strong voices to the extent that we can. And we're doing our best to augment that. I'll talk about that momentarily.
Okay.
Um, it really, just try to make our members' lives easier by providing solutions. I mentioned our associate members, whether that's tech solutions, whether it's the education components. We just had a scheduling focused webinar, to help agencies streamline their scheduling and work through the challenges on that. And then, our conference coming up in October, where not only is it a great opportunity for everybody to get together and share their successes and challenges, but also to learn from the various session speakers. And we have a great speaker in Jason Dorsey as our keynote speaker. So, all that put together is basically my vision is creating a community for the agencies. And, we certainly welcome anyone who has an interest, whether it's, private pay, Medicaid, veterans, and we're shoring up our approach to providing the right resources in those various areas. But we try to be a big tent within the home care space. And as I said, we want to really work together to collaborate and create a voice because we're just stronger together. I think we've shown that time and time again. And we'll talk about advocacy successes
Yes.
momentarily. And that only happens when we have a cohesive voice and we all work together. So the more the merrier, the stronger we are as we build out and welcome additional members and partners within the industry and without the industry, outside the
Yeah.
industry is important as well. So, that in a nutshell is what we try to do here at HCAOA. We're supported by an incredibly strong and fabulous board, as well as the executive committee. We just finished our strategic planning work, which focused on things like, membership, how we can provide the right resources, and certainly advocacy, making sure that we're providing the right tools and ensuring that we provide a strong voice for the industry.
That's great. I want to go back really quick because you mentioned the conference, and I just want to give it a plug personally because I've attended the conference, I think 3 times, a couple of times as an attendee, once as a vendor. And I believe that you can attend that conference whether you are a member or not. So I think it might be, if you're not a member, it would be a good place for people to go to kind of get a taste of what HCAOA is really about. And the sessions are just, they're so worth it. Such a great conference. It's definitely one of the best that I've ever attended. You come away refreshed with so many different ideas. You get that chance to talk to your peers and just kind of get more information and more ideas. So I'm going to put a plug in for you for the conference because
Yeah,
it's
thank
it's
you.
really worth going.
Thank you so much for saying that. Yes, we welcome everyone to join us in October in Dallas. It's actually my home state. I'm a native Texan, so I'll be wearing my boots and welcoming everybody there. But as I mentioned, it is a great opportunity for members and non-members. And yes, you don't have to be a member to join. There's a different rate for that, but we encourage everybody to attend and take advantage of again, the networking, learning from your peers, building out your networks, but also, yes, the sessions are, we try to make sure that we provide the right resources and tools for everyone. We have a robust education committee, and they've done a fantastic job of working with our staff and providing sessions on things like AI, technology, operations, how to scale your operations, having tough conversations, which is a part of your daily work, right? Scheduling for sure, marketing, things like that. So, sort of covering the spectrum of issues. And you mentioned earlier, that we heard, there are legal elements in play, regulatory elements, and
Yes.
we have a number of legal sessions, legal related sessions, so you can learn from the experts of what to do, certainly what not to do,
Yeah,
things like that, to really, both streamline your operations, but also know, here's some of the potential pitfalls. Here are some things that are best practices. Uh, and so, our hope is that those who attend find that the educational sessions are incredibly worthwhile, and give you tools to take back home and implement within your own agency. And that's the most important thing. I mean, if to have a tangible takeaway. And I'll say the same for our keynote speaker, Jason Dorsey. I don't want to give away his topic because it's I think going to be really inspiring and incredibly helpful, again, with some key takeaways. So please join us for that. And then, of course, we honor the Caregiver of the Year. And this year we've done it a little bit differently. I credit the staff team for this thought. We're doing it on a regional basis, so there'll be
oh,
regional
neat.
representatives, and then we'll announce the winner. The regional finalists will be in attendance, and then we'll announce the overall winner at the
Mhm.
conference. And
That's
that's
exciting.
sort of the backbone of our industry, right? The caregivers. And so it's so
Yes,
great to be able to highlight them and recognize them and thank them for their contributions. So just
absolutely.
a wealth of information. And, don't forget we have an exhibitor space, which we've hit capacity already, which just shows the
Ah,
incredible interest of being in attendance at the conference and recognizing the value of interacting with those of you who are attending. So we will have a robust exhibit hall, and certainly encourage you to meet with the vendors and companies within the hallway. They will provide a lot of solutions. They can help you with your day-to-day operations and maybe some things that you've never even thought about. So so many opportunities, and we're excited, again, excited to go to my home state, and I certainly welcome all of you to join us, and thank you for considering
absolutely. That's it's always a good time. Like I said, a great conference.
it.
So let's go back to I think I mentioned it's your second anniversary as CEO. Can you give me an idea, like maybe your perspective on the industry and things that have changed in the last 2 years? Because I feel like it's a lot, but I would love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I'll start within the industry, and then I'll talk about sort of external forces. I think internally, I think I mentioned educational sessions at the conference being AI and technology. I think there's been such an incredible focus on that for good reason. I think we're not the only industry doing that. I mean, I'm taking time in my free time in the evenings going through AI and seeing what tools would be helpful to the association and my own work. And the same thing goes for the agency model. And we've had some really great AI sessions, standing room only sessions at our conference. And so I think that's something that continues. How can you leverage technology, whether it's streamlining, like how you do recording, documentation, things like that. So it's not just all handwritten notes that go sort of in the proverbial ether. Is there a way to do that sort of an automated basis? Monitoring those you serve, your clients, the families, uh, when you don't have somebody physically in the room with them, perhaps at night. So, if there's a fall or something, things like that. So I think those things are definitely uh, continuing to be, I'll say, trends. I think also, the human element. We I think have seen the importance of things like training. Ensuring that they're robust. They're keep using the word robust, but very strong training. systems and elements, which helps with your recruitment and retention. And I think that's something that's always been there, but I think there's been an emphasis on that. And we'll talk a little bit about like the 80/20 provision
Yeah,
from CMS. But that was one of the concerns, is that something like that, where you set aside a percentage for wages, and you shrink the administrative costs, trainings within that. So that was one of our big concerns, is that you don't want to lose that component, because it's so important to recruitment and
absolutely.
retention. So that's sort of I think an internal lens. And of course, the workforce piece of, that continues, especially coming out of, we use the phrase coming out of COVID. I mean, I know it's, feels like a number of years now, but it's still the need for caregivers, exploded during the COVID, and it really hasn't gone away. And so, ensuring that there are enough caregivers, and that goes back to recruitment and retention, and also building out the workforce pool, which we'll talk about momentarily. So I think those are some of the internal elements. I think externally, a shift in a good way is that I think home care is starting to get a lot more visibility. For one thing, I think visibility in the sense that it's a separate entity, and a recognition that, there's home health, and then
Mhm.
there's home care. And there is a difference, and there's a difference of how, clients and families pay for it. And I think there's a recognition. And we saw that in the presidential election, which seems like ages ago, but actually it wasn't that long ago. And we saw,
Right.
both candidates promote home care solutions, with President Trump suggesting a tax credit. Vice President Harris suggested a Medicare approach to it. So the fact that there were public conversations during the election about how to bolster the home care industry, is heartening. It's good to see that there's a recognition of the value of the industry, in that, in a very public way. So I think that's another shift that we're seeing, and also, where we're having regulators and legislators reach out to us, both on the federal and state level. And again, that sort of reinforces the value of HCAOA. They see us as, being representative of the home care industry, and they reach out to us for feedback on various proposals, which is what we want. You want to be at the table, you want to be talking about it before it's promulgated, because once it's enacted, then it's too late, and then it's,
Mhm.
it's you can make changes, but it's harder that way. So the fact that they're being proactive and reaching out to us, I think that's another shift that's, incredibly helpful, and a good sign for our industry, that we're really coming into our own.
Absolutely. Thank you for all that. So kind of going along that, that same tangent, as far as like, we do see people talking about home care and seeing the need for it. And we talked a little bit about the challenges, but let's talk a little bit more about them. So what do you consider, because you see it all from a national level, whereas a lot of people are looking at their specific state or even their specific city or county. What are you seeing as far nationwide as being the most pressing challenges facing our industry right now? And how is HCAOA stepping up to the plate to help with those challenges?
Sure. Yeah, I would mention caregiver, though, it depends on who you talk to. I think some, there's research behind this, and I've heard this anecdotally, where um, there's definitely the workforce element, but it may not, in some cases they've landed on how to do the recruitment and retention. And so there's a little bit more of, uh, I would say, success there. Though, overarchingly, we still are trying to, expand the pool of caregivers, just because we know the need's only going to increase
Yes,
over time, with the elderly population about to explode. And we talked a little bit about that
mhm,
last year.
we did.
That's not going to change, unfortunately. Um, and so we know that the caregiver pool now is nowhere near what it needs to be when we talk about, 10, 20 years from now. So I think, that's part of it. What I've seen, though, is, we've seen some data points where that workforce element's important, but we're also seeing a rise in the scheduling, the systems being in place to do that efficiently and effectively. So that's a challenge and opportunity, I think, within the industry. And then, of course, we're seeing the challenge of pay. So, the ability of clients, families being able to pay, the cost increasing, and the rising costs of, of agencies. You talk about things like training and things like that. There are costs associated to them. And that's, again, when we hear something like an 80/20 provision where administrative costs are limited, if there's definitely a squeeze there, right? So, those are some of the key elements. And I would say, at this point, probably everybody has sort of an eye on the economy just to see, from an external factor standpoint, what that might, whether that might have an impact, both in terms of the, families being able to pay their ability, and then, just what costs may be ratcheted up and, on the agency level. So, I think some of those things are what we're paying attention to and what we've heard from our friends in the industry in terms of what we're trying to do to respond to that. I mentioned scheduling. We just had the scheduling webinar. We'll have more sessions on that at the national conference. Certainly the recruiting and retention, those are, again, we have sessions at the conference on that. And we're looking to build out, other educational tools. We did a retention webinar at the end of last year. And then the workforce piece, that's part of our advocacy element. In addition to the recruitment retention piece, we're also trying to build out some common sense immigration elements like the EB-3 visa, streamlining that. There's some applications that are still outstanding from like 2019 just because the process is incredibly slow and onerous. So, what can we do to streamline that, maybe speed it up so we can leverage that? And we know of agencies who have been very successful with EB-3 workers coming into the caregiver workforce pool. And then we've also promulgated what would be a new home care visa. So, an opportunity to really have a focal point on home care and building out the workforce that way. So, we're trying to look at different levels, both, that external lens of doing the advocacy piece, but also providing the tools or resources to agencies so they can also respond from an operational standpoint.
Okay, that's great. Well, and I think that kind of ties us into where I want to go next, which is a topic that I know based on your background is very near and dear to your heart, but the advocacy, lobbying, and policy. What are the priorities for HCAOA right now?
So we had a great conversation with we have Cheryl Stanton, our legislative director, who oversees our policy committee, and she's an officer on the board. So we sat down as a staff team and with her and with another colleague and really hashed out, what's the vision for 2025, and we did, back in January. And so it kind of broke out into a number of areas. One was tax policy, which gets back to, trying to help the families, talking about, the cost of the clients and families served by our industry and trying to help them. So tax policy was number one, and I'll go into the details for each in a moment. The companionship exemption was another. We saw that as a potential opportunity, knowing that President Trump and his administration would probably be open to looking into something like that. The 80/20 provision, the CMS 80/20 provision that, again, is sort of a bright line wage administrative cost ratio. So those were sort of the key ones. And then we've been building out things like national standards, legislation and regulations for the various states so we can try to have an even playing field because it's such a different, I think that's probably one of we didn't talk about this, one of the challenges for agencies if they're in more than one state, just staying abreast of the different regulations. Is there licensing? Is there not licensing? All tough questions. And from state to state, you're having to do things a little bit differently. So how can we sort of create a foundation where it's a little bit easier and more streamlined? On that topic, EVV rules, can we look at, taking state, examples that work from certain states and then applying that across the board, because we know that's also sort of can be onerous as well. So, and then finally, looking at veterans, building on the success of the Elizabeth Dole 21st Century package that had the Elizabeth Dole home care bill in it, continue to work on that and see what we can do next. So, going back to going more in depth on some of these, so with the tax policy, we were looking at different ways, and we started this conversation with Congress, members of Congress and their staff early on last year before, before we knew who won the election, and
Mhm.
before, we were certain that budget reconciliation would happen. And what we did was we went in and, and presented a number of options. So, there's the tax credit option. So, credit for caring, where you have a potential new tax credit for families to use. We also looked at, expansion of HSA, FSA. For instance, one bill would allow application of HSA and FSA to parents or a parent of a spouse. And so, it's basically just expansion of existing law. Um, you know, other other bills that would allow, HSAs, FSAs to be applied to home care, things like that. So, fairly common sense elements. So, we talked about those early on, and I'll say that both sides of the aisle were definitely interested. They understood the importance. Now, the unfortunate element is that none of those provisions were included in budget reconciliation, the big
Yeah.
beautiful bill that passed was enacted on July 4th by President Trump. But it gives us an entry point, and we knew that was sort of an uphill battle. The tax credit had a cost to it, which, given the tight, we all saw in the news how tight things were with the
Yeah.
reconciliation. So we knew that was going to be an uphill battle. And then, conversely, it's sort of counterintuitive, but because of the way the budget reconciliation bill works, there does have to be a cost to a provision. So, like the HSA, FSA expansion provisions, they didn't have a cost, so they technically could not go into the bill. Um, so that's a long-winded way of saying, but the conversation's there, and they will talk about tax policy again. There will be, other packages coming down the pipeline, and that's the the innate, I guess, art and science of advocacy is, it takes some time with provisions. And so we'll continue to have those conversations. And, I think based on what we've heard, again, on a bipartisan level, we have a strong chance of success. We just have to have the right vehicle to attach these provisions to them. There's also another bill, CSN, continuous skilled nursing, that was reintroduced last year. It was introduced by now Vice President Vance. It's been reintroduced this year to basically create standards around, as CSN, formerly called private duty nursing. So that's
Mhm.
another bill that we're excited about, and is bipartisan. We think that there'll be a chance to move that forward. And then I mentioned workforce and immigration. We've talked about the visa approach, both with the administration and members of Congress. Again, from a bipartisan standpoint, definitely interested in it, but also, again, it's a timing issue. It's probably not probably not this year, but I think at some point in time there'll be the opening, especially on EB3. Again, it's an existing visa. It's how can we streamline it? Like right now, there are provisions where you have to post things in the newspaper, and who does that anymore? Can we do
Right.
that electronic? So an ongoing conversation. I think we talked about this a little bit last year. So it's just you have to continue the drumbeat, and eventually it'll get enacted, and that's kind of what we see. Companionship exemption. We talked about that holistically. So we made that sort of a supplemental element of our advocacy day, which I'll talk about in a minute. So we met with Department of Labor and the Small Business Administration. And again, when I talk about shifts, Small Business Administration, SBA, reached out to us about, hey, what are regulations that might be challenging that maybe we should open them up. And this was with the early on this year with the new administration. So we're again having departments and agencies, federal agencies, proactively reach out to us, which is great.
That is
So,
great.
we had the conversation about, when the rule changed um, back around 2013, that it really had an impact on agencies. The
Yes.
overtime minimum wage rule is being applied. It minimized the ability to do, the in-home care for an extended period of time. And so, we provided a lot of data on that based upon feedback from our members. And so, we've seen that move the needle. Not only have they promulgated a rule to roll it back, but also in the interim, a few weeks ago, the Department of Labor came out and said we will not enforce the current law. We'll basically go back to what was basically the 1970s original version of the law, where home care was not included within the overtime and minimum wage restraints. So, that shows the success that we can have as an industry and as part of HCAOA. It's been something that we've been doing a lot of advocacy and back in the day, a legal challenge as well. So, more to come on that, but we encourage you, if you go on our website, you can provide feedback to the Department of Labor regarding the companionship exemption. You can lend your voice in that way. We have a template letter that you can personalize and talk about. Here's the impact that it had. Here's the positive impact, negative impact that it had back in the day when it was promulgated. And here's the positive impact if we lift those restrictions, the positive impact on my particular agency company. So please, take a moment and lend your voice. I believe it's September 1st is the deadline. So you have a little bit of time, but we're hoping we get enough voices to move the needle and ensure that Department of Labor reverses that. Similarly, we've had conversations with SBA and Department of Labor and CMS about the Medicaid 80/20 provision. We early on, there was a President Trump executive order saying that they wanted to look at various regulations and pause them while they reviewed them. And we recommended that the 80/20 provision of the Medicaid access rule be one of those. And so, they haven't put a pause on that yet, but we've had a number of conversations with the administration about this. And, we do think there's optimism around rolling it back. There's not anything concrete yet that we can point to, but certainly something that I think is on the table, and there's a great interest in making sure that something like that doesn't go into effect and negatively impact the industry across the board. And it'll vary state by state, because that ratio is just the 80/20. It just, as a bright line test, doesn't work well because every state's a little bit different. The rates are a little bit different, Medicaid, and so it's just incredibly problematic. And I think the administration is listening to those to that feedback. So more to come on that, but we're very hopeful about that. I think that kind of covers the vast majority, but we are just to those out there listening to this, just know that we are making inroads and that your voice is so very important. So when I say, provide comments on things like companionship exemption, and later on, if we ask you to lend your voice for 80/20, please do so, because it makes an impact. It does change policy. We've seen that with them pausing the application of the companionship exemption, and the fact that they promulgated a potential rule to roll it back is based on your voices in concert with HCAOA. So those of you who have provided your voice in the past, thank you very much, and we hope you'll do so again now that we have this opportunity.
Yes. Yeah. That's one thing I think you and I had discussed previously too, Buzz, the importance of speaking up and not just, sitting on the sidelines waiting for Jason Lee and his team to do things. I mean, you guys are out there fighting our battles for us, but there's a lot that we can do, on the sidelines to help. So, do you have any other recommendations or suggestions, other than, like, I know this specific thing, you said you have some templates that are on your website, we can go in and we can fill those out, but is there anything that home care agency owners, operators, even caregivers can be doing on a regular basis to help with legislation, maybe, staying in touch with their local law officials, anything like that? What could be helpful for us to help you help us, basically?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that question. So I think you hit on one of the key elements, which is engaging your both state and federal legislators, and you can do that on the ground within your locality. If we're talking about a federal, whether it's a congressperson or a senator, they have district offices. So even if you're not able to join us in DC, you can reach out to the district office, the local office, and have conversations. And it is effective. I mean, that's the point of those offices, is to hear from constituents like yourselves. And I always say this, that you are the most important voice in the room You mentioned that the Jason Lees of the world can go go to the Capitol, but at the end of the
Yeah.
day, for beyond where I live now, Virginia, generally I'm not a constituent when I go up there. So what they really want is to hear the voices of their constituents, and how will things impact people back home in their state or district. And so that you have such a powerful voice, and they're there to listen to you. I mean, those offices are wanting to hear from you. So that's one piece, is building those relationships, which is, everybody who's listening today, you are well prepared to have those conversations, because relationship building is what you do. You do it with clients and families all the time. You do it with the caregivers. It's just applying that to meeting with legislators and their staff teams, and
Mhm.
they are very welcoming. Just know that, and they want to hear from you. Um, the other way to stay engaged is, pay attention to our website, both from a federal standpoint. You can look up our priorities, but also we have state chapter pages, state pages, so you can see what's, maybe a legislative regulatory priority in your local area. And then the last thing I'll say is, if it's possible, we certainly welcome you to join us at our national advocacy days in DC. We've had them in April the past couple of years. We're looking at probably the latter half of April for next year. This year we set a record. We had over 141 attendees from representing, I want to say 32 states. And we
Wow,
had,
that's great.
yeah, it was fantastic. We had groups of 5 or 6 people going to various meetings, and we had over 140 meetings with members of Congress and their staff
Mhm.
teams. So, and we talked about tax policy, things like that, and that's, again, it's so critically important for members of Congress to hear from you,
Yeah.
much less so than myself. I mean, I'm great. They love to have information uh, shared by me to them, but when it comes to really enacting change, it's hearing from all of you,
Yeah.
those of you who are the voices of the constituent. And so certainly encourage you to join us in 2026 in April. We make it very easy. Everything's turnkey. We have all the materials for you, but it's a great opportunity to engage members of Congress and really be a part of. I don't understate this. This is being a part of history. You think about all of the advocacy done decades, past decades, past years, people walking up and down the steps of the Capitol. You can be a part of that, and you can really enact change by doing so. So, encourage you to join us on
Yeah.
multiple levels, but certainly invite you to Advocacy Day.
Yeah, that's very important. And I like how you said you make it easy, because there's going to be a lot of people who are watching this who will probably be thinking to themselves, that sounds really hard. I don't know how to talk to people. I might feel a little because, I'm down here and they're a politician, but
Right.
don't be afraid of them. I mean, they're
Yep.
people and their job is to help us, right? And they're not going to know how to help us unless we use those voices to tell them what we need. So
Right.
I'm glad that you said, you're like, we have everything laid out. We'll tell you what
Yeah.
to do, what to say. Don't be scared.
Yeah, we go through a very, thorough training. So we have a reception in the evening, and then the actual advocacy day is usually on a Tuesday. And we have a breakfast, and we walk through everything. We talk about, here are the priorities, and we give you a packet. Here are the priorities that are in the packet. Here's sort of how to lay out the priorities, and have that conversation with whether it's the member of Congress or their staff team. And again, I encourage all of you to do it. And again, say that you are well versed in being able to do this type of thing, because that relationship building component is something that's innate, is something that you do all the time. It's just a different audience, but
Well, and they've
everybody
got real
is the same.
stories,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know? Yeah, they have the real day to day. This is what's
Yeah,
happening in my life right now that's
yeah,
being affected, and this is how you can help.
yeah, absolutely.
It's powerful. It is
Yeah.
powerful. All right, we've talked about a lot of stuff. I don't want to forget, I had a couple other things I wanted to discuss with you. One is talking about some of your key partners that you collaborate with. Is there anything going on there? And I know, again, we touched a little bit on it when it talks to, like,
Yeah.
VA and stuff like that, but is there anything going on with your partners right now strategically that is moving the industry forward that you want to mention?
Sure. So, we've always worked well with formerly known as NAC or NOC, however you want to
Right.
pronounce the acronym. Now the National Alliance for Care at Home, the Alliance. They're of course led by Steve Landers now, and Steve and I have been uh, working together and trying to see, certainly advocacy. We've always been strong in working together on that. The 80/20 provision is a perfect example of that. But we're
Yes.
talking about, what other areas can we work together? Definitely advocacy in building that out. And then, maybe things like education. Are there, maybe data and research elements? So that continues to be a conversation. Then, working with natural partners like AARP, Leading Age. There's a CMS related coalition, and that was so instrumental in providing feedback about things like 80/20.
Hmm.
And we're trying to we continue to meet as a coalition. What we're trying to do is re-engage meetings with the CMS. Um, we had those scheduled on a regular basis uh, prior to the administration change. So, our plan is to circle back on that after, everything's kind of settled over there. Um, Certainly working well with state associations. So we've made, we've had, I would say, challenges and opportunities on the state level with regulation and legislation. Indiana is an example. So Evan, the leader of the Indiana State Association, has been a fantastic uh, collaborator with HCAOA. We worked well with Oregon on an issue out there regarding standards boards. Um, we've had good conversations with our colleagues at CASA in California. So also trying to build that out on a local level to make sure that we're in alignment whenever possible. Because again, the it's a much stronger voice when you have a broader coalition and
Right.
broader
When your voice is
partners.
consistent. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we're excited about that. I think we're trying to make more inroads. I have a colleague over at the Wounded Warrior Project, so hoping
Mm.
to build. That would be a natural fit, right,
Yes.
in terms of advocacy around veterans and that type of thing. Certainly looking at others where we can expand our partnership. So I think, we have a great foundation, a great baseline, but there's so much room for us to partner with others, both natural partners, but I think there's some outside, the industry where it may not, on paper make sense right away, but I think, we can find ways where we can learn from each other and lend a voice, to each other's causes. And so that's something definitely from my standpoint, my vision to continue to build out those partnerships because it does definitely from an advocacy standpoint move the needle more quickly in a more expansive way.
I love that you're thinking outside the box like that because, like you said, it does really help you get a bigger foothold on the whole
Mhm.
thing and grow your impact. That was actually one of my questions is what is your vision for HCAOA? And you kind of just touched on a little bit right there. Do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I think, what I would like to do is, and you mentioned storytelling with advocacy, which is so very, critically important. But it's not, storytelling expands to, how we engage the public, how we engage the media, how we build out home care as an industry. And so that's from a vision standpoint, I think, we can continue, we do a good job of telling the story. How can we enhance that? How can we bring people from again outside the industry? So it's not just, at a certain point, if it's just internal, if it's just us speaking, then yeah, at some point the you hit a plateau in terms of your voice. So, can we get, families, the caregivers to provide their voices a little bit more strongly? Are there champions of home care? You're starting to see uh, people who are more visible, I would call them celebrities who are recognizing like, their parents are receiving home care. And so, there's a need to raise the profile of
Mhm.
the industry. So I think there's a lot of potential, untapped potential in terms of that storytelling to both promote the industry, but also uh, set the foundation for families and the public to understand the importance of preparing for home care, which I don't think we're there yet. Getting there, but I don't think we're totally there yet. And I think I mentioned this last year of, people think about saving for retirement, um,
Right.
things like that, but not necessarily in the sense of saving for home care and being able to, for those out-of-pocket costs, being able to deal with that when the time comes, whether it's a family member or yourself. And I think that's where that storytelling can really have a huge impact. And
Mhm.
if we really strike the right tone, that helps us from an advocacy standpoint because it's not just us as an industry promoting policy changes, but then you hear it from the families, the caregivers, the public, even the media, and that's what really starts that groundswell where it's like, okay, we need a transformational shift. And so I think that's doing that, and that's an important element of our future, just providing that. I would say an enhanced perspective. It's already there, but just you know taking it beyond where we are now and really tapping into some voices who haven't been heard yet.
That's great. I love it. Yeah, I agree. I've seen so many celebrities on there. And you and I talked last year about, how home care had affected your personal life. And this year I'm seeing that in my personal life where my grandmother's getting to the point where
Oh,
she
right.
needs it. And just seeing all of that from eventually it's going to hit everybody.
Yeah.
Someone will be affected. If it's not you, it's going to be somebody but eventually it will be you. So I agree, just the importance of being prepared for that, a nationwide level is crucial. So I'm glad that you brought that back up again. So to close, I'm going to ask you one more question.
Sure.
Um, what keeps you, because this is a lot, you deal with so much legislation, dealing with politicians, I'm sure is not the easiest thing in the world. What keeps you inspired in this work and what gives you hope for the future of home care?
Well, the inspiration is what you just said. I mean, I think a lot of us have personal stories about how home care has positively touched our lives or the lives of our family members, and that continues for me, today. So, seeing the passion and compassion of caregivers and the positive impact they have on my family is definitely what keeps me going. I think, just seeing the industry pull together and like an advocacy day, seeing everybody come to DC, 140 some odd people, and talking about the value of home care. I think that in of itself, like it's so gratifying to see that come together. Um, and also, one thing I didn't talk about in terms of um, providing that membership value and things like that is we're also looking, part of the vision is building out our resources, which includes the staff team. So we recently brought on Kristen Wheeler, who's our senior director of membership strategy and industry partnerships, to really focus on that membership engagement piece, and then also our partners within the space, and like I said, even some who may be outside the space. Uh, I think that's incredibly exciting to bring in someone like Kristen, building out the staff team. We're going to add to our GR team. Um, there's no shortage of work as we've seen from this year,
Right.
so both on the federal and state level. So we're in the midst of bringing on additional GR government relations support. So I think that's also what inspires me is that there are so many talented individuals out there who want to be a part of HCAOA and be part of a solution and part of the vision for the future, and willing to join to help serve all of you in the industry. I think that's incredibly gratifying because there's a lot of talent out there, and we're fortunate that they want to come work for us. So I think that's another element of just being able to provide the necessary resources and tools to our members, which includes personnel. But I think it's also just there's so many blue sky elements, whether it's more data and research. That's so critically important when we go to the Hill and we have a data and research committee. We're actually going to meet momentarily this afternoon to continue that work. Um, the educational components. It's just inspiring because there's so much we can do together for the industry and learn from each other, address the challenges, share the successes, and that's what really gets me energized every morning when I get out of bed, knowing that I'm fortunate to be a part of that kind of, I'll say community again. That's really what we want to instill, is a sense of community among the industry as a whole, definitely our members, but the home care industry as a whole, and create a welcoming environment where everyone feels that they have a part and can play a critical role.
I love that. And I also love how you opened it where you said that the people who are joining you are trying to be part of the solution.
Mhm.
And I think that's very important and impactful to say, and to remind our home care agencies who are watching this that we're always going to develop problems. That's just the way life is
Yeah.
and the way business goes. But when you have an organization out there like HCAOA that is constantly on the front lines, really working to find solutions to problems that do come up, and preemptively solve
Mhm.
problems before they happen, I think it is so vital for our industry. So thank you. And thank you to all of your staff at HCAOA and your board members for everything that you guys do. We appreciate you here at Rosemark. I know our customers do. And I hope that anybody watching this got a lot of great information and insights on the hard work that is going on behind the scenes right now. And hopefully it will inspire them to maybe attend the conference later
Mhm.
this year, and definitely Advocacy Day next year on the Hill. I think both would be very good for our customers and anybody else watching to, get on board with those things and
Absolutely.
have more of a voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate it. You have a wonderful
Absolutely.
day.
You too. Thank you for your time. Thanks, everyone.